So we are given the following radical and we are asked to simplify, but they also tell us to assume all variables represent positive numbers. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply the radical rule. And this radical rule is going to allow us to go ahead and separate the 200, the x to the 7th, and the y to the 5. And so a radical rule, suppose we had a, b, c, we could turn that into the square root of a times the square root of b times the square root of c. This means that they're the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and do that to our problem. So 200x y to the 5. We're going to go ahead and rewrite it as the square root of 200 times the square root of x to the 7 times the square root of y to the 5. Then now we're going to be able to go ahead and simplify things even further. So 200 we can rewrite as 100 times 2. This right here we can rewrite as x to the 6 times times the square root of x. And this one we're going to rewrite as y to the 4 times the square root of y. And so now we can go ahead and again separate what we can. Square root of 100 times the square root of 2 times the square root of x to the 6 times the square root of x times the square root of y to the 4 times the square root of y. And then now we can go ahead and rewrite this one using a radical rule. So we can have n square root of an. So that's what I mean. So 10, here are little outside numbers 2, so the square root of 10 squared times the square root of 2, we can't do anything with the square root of 2, times the square root of x to the 6 times the square root of x times the square root of y to the 4 times the square root of y. So finally, we can go ahead and rewrite the square roots as fractions. This half right here, that's a square root. We just rewrote it into that. And we're going to go ahead and do that with every other value. So then I'll have x to the 6 to the half times the square root of x times y to the 4 to the half times y times the square root of y. And then now we're going to apply the rules of exponents. And so the rules of exponents tells us that when we have an exponent inside the parentheses and we are raising it to the power, we are going to go ahead and multiply those two numbers. So what that means is 10 to the square root of 2 now becomes 10 to the square root of 2 times 1/2. And then we still have our square root of 2 here. And then here, this is going to turn to x to the 6 times 1/2. And then the square root of x. And then here, we're going to have y to the 4 times 1/2 times the square root of y. And now we can go ahead and multiply our exponents. So we get 2 times 1/2 is just 2 over 2. And then we have 6 times 1/2 is 6 over 2. And then finally 4 times 1/2 is 4 over 2. And so 2 over 2 is just 10. 6 over 2 is just 3. Y 4 over 2 is just 2. And you can see now this is about as simple as we can get. And so we can go ahead and just combine these terms right here and just put them all underneath the square root again. So I'm going to go ahead and move my x's and y's over here. And so now I'll put everything underneath here. And this right here would be our final answer.